generative AI isn't about how to get people to do more work. It's how do we elevate humans to do better work, more impactful work. But the big kicker, and to your point around change management, Ali, was big difference between those who were able to turn that 1 hour a day into productive time, i.e. do something more valuable, or turn it into real productivity savings, was the number 3. And 3 was the number of training sessions they'd attended.
Yeah.
And so the moment they had those 3 training sessions, they were able to recognize those productivity gains, which I thought was fascinating at the time.
Welcome to the Inner Game of Change, the podcast that explores the evolving landscape of change management, leadership, and transformation. I am your host, Ali Juma. Today, I'm chatting with Ian Hurd, Director of Public Sector Modern Work at Microsoft ANZ, a leader who's right at the heart of how AI is reshaping the way we work. In this episode, we talk about the real story behind generative AI Copilot, what change looks inside Microsoft, and why the role of a change manager might just be turning into a chief excitement officer. From navigating resistance, yes, even inside Microsoft, to embracing agentic workflows, this episode offers a grounded look at how leadership and curiosity go hand in hand in today's fast-moving world. We also dig into what makes AI adoption truly work, the mindset, the momentum, and the magic that happens when teams stop asking if it works and start exploring how it can help. This one is real, practical, with a good humor, forward-looking ideas and insights for anyone navigating what's next. I am grateful to have Ian chatting with me today. Well, Ian, thank you so much for joining me in the Inner Game of Change podcast. I am eternally grateful for your time.
Thanks, Ali. Looking forward to this.
Thank you so much. Ian, based on your role and what you do, we're going to talk a lot about technology and AI. So I hope we're going to inject some human aspect of it. And I'm sure there's going to be some funny stories in there. Before we start, it will be fantastic to introduce yourself to my audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, everyone. My name's Ian Hurd. I'm in the very fortunate position to lead the Australia-New Zealand public sector business for Microsoft pertaining to all things modern work. So looking after the solution sets that we have across, obviously now Copilot and Copilot for Microsoft 365 across our Microsoft 365 stack, and also our virtualization stack with solutions like Windows 365, Azure Virtual Desktop, and then coupled with that, also our fantastic devices on Surface.
When you say modern workplace and new ways of working, do you want to educate me on that, Ian?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, the modern work, we moved from modern workplace to modern work, and I think we made that call around COVID time, when obviously the lines between the workplace and work had blurred hugely. And so for us, modern work, and others have called it the digital workplace and new ways of work, are just really how day-to-day traditional work activities can be infused with digital technology, and to make, hopefully, employees more productive, but also enable them to progress their careers, look after areas like well-being, and also address, I think, the thing that probably all at some stage in our lives had to address, which is the work-life balance, or as I've recently heard it called, work-life harmony. Because I think the opportunity for balance is long gone. It's more now how we can harmonize the interaction between work and home.
That's a nice way of actually describing it. It's the harmony between the two states. I must admit, I don't have a harmony. The lines are blurred between, because work for me is actually a bit of a fun as well, part of my fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's got to be, right? It's got to be. And I think the harmony point is just so crucial. You know, we're living in a 24-hour world now. You know, it's not like, I remember back in I guess it was probably about 2000. You can probably keep me honest here. I had the, what do you remember, the Palm Trios? And then after that, the BlackBerry back in, I guess it would have been 2006, 2007. And that was the moment for me that you stopped finishing your day at 5:30, 6 o'clock or whatever that time was. And you started to live that 24-hour life. So I think it's been a real journey for the workplace over the past 15 years or so, 20 years or so, is trying to find what is that right balance, what is that right harmony. And as you said, Ali, you've hit part of that harmony, which is, you're doing what you're interested in, which is just crucial.
I love that. Let's dive into, so you work for Microsoft, and what I love about what you guys do at Microsoft, change and advancement is at the heart of everything you do. I'm going to share with you something funny. I always think that there's a group of people in a very dark room somewhere in Microsoft, and they're thinking of all of these user ideas, and what the users need to have. And am I true?
You probably are. I don't see it. But I would hope we're doing it not just thinking of what we think people are going to use, but we actually start off with understanding how people live today.
Absolutely.
And then try and build from there.
Yeah.
I think as always, look, you'll know this, Ali, there's that. You've always got to have a really good balance by, to use the Henry Ford analogy, by, sometimes you've got to build a faster horse, right?
Yes.
But sometimes you've got to change the game completely. And, certainly I think that's what we strive to do. And I think you'll tell me, you're far better qualified in the world of change than I am. But I think that's a crucial part of change. Sometimes you've got to completely change the game. And sometimes you can, you need to just do what you're doing now better.
And now Microsoft, over the last couple of years, moved into changing the game and focusing on artificial intelligence. Talk to me, what happens and what are some of the conversations that probably happened about a couple of years ago at Microsoft, and then you started thinking this is going to be a huge change, and certainly we're going to change the game.
Yeah. Look, I'm sure there are many conversations that I'm not aware of or not privy to, but certainly what I can see, I think it's unbelievable that we're 14 months, 2 years and 2 months ago, so 26 months ago, ChatGPT had launched into the market. And I think the rate of change that we've seen in that stage, since that stage, has been just incredible. The level of market disruption is, as we're hearing of something new literally every week, aren't we?
Yes.
In terms of how artificial intelligence is affecting the home, affecting work, and I think more importantly, the promise that it's got to really transform everything we do going forward. So certainly from Microsoft's perspective, we've obviously been on a huge change initiative ourselves. I remember Copilot. I think the first out of the blocks that we had was GitHub Copilot, which really revolutionizes the overall productivity of a developer. And we're now seeing, thousands and millions of lines of code being developed by GitHub Copilot, and really extreme productivity gains there. Then literally I remember sitting there in, I think it was March 2023, I guess, when Copilot was announced. And trust me, we found out the same day as you did. And we were like, wow, this really changes the game. The ability to connect all of those amazing demonstrations we'd seen with ChatGPT, but now be able to ground it in your securely in your work environment, to really be able to provide that highly qualified intern to work alongside you. And then the other interesting part for me then is, that really enables humans to do what they're doing today better and more productive. And if you don't mind, Ali, I'll just zoom out a little bit outside of Microsoft.
Sure.
I think one of the things that we need to embrace here is the macro position for us, and the macro opportunity and the macro position that we have certainly in the developed world right now, which is that, areas like unemployment are at an all-time low. Productivity in most Western economies, productivity per capita is pretty flat, right? Mm-hmm. Given the, certainly since, if you wrap up mobile, cloud, and now AI all into one trend and call it the digital industrial revolution, it hasn't really fulfilled that productivity gain promise that we saw maybe in the steam revolution or the electricity revolution, and that is what I would say.
Not yet, yes.
And then you look at, population growth, and population growth is flat to declining, right? Populations are getting older. Here in Australia, and if I look at across Australia and New Zealand, our working age population will decline by, on the current path, decline by 5 to 10% over the next 30 years. And the number, because of, the great advances in healthcare that we all experience, we're going to have 5 to 10% more people in, if you like, retirement age. So we're going to have 5 to 10% less people supporting 5 to 10% people more, and people are having less children, etc., etc. So we're left with this deep requirement now to really accelerate human productivity and human ingenuity. It's a must, not a nice to have. You could argue things like the steam revolution, that was a nice to have that accelerated human productivity. This is a must. And so I think for me, artificial intelligence just couldn't come at a better time. It's, yes, there are areas of change that we need to get through. There are considerations we have to work through with our customers, with our partners, and within our own technology groups. But we're in an extremely exciting time, I think, and very, very blessed that I'm in an organization that's at the forefront of that.
I'm always keen to understand organizations like Microsoft. And I can only make some assumptions. They play in two roles. Or first of all, change. They actually make the change. They're change makers to their clients, to the outside world. Mm-hmm. But then to introduce the change to the outside world, that change would need to happen internally to their employees.
Yes. Yeah.
Talk to me about somebody working at an organization like Microsoft. Does that mean that the traditional way we look at managing change? Okay, well, let me put it in a simple format. Does that mean that there is no change resistance from people inside Microsoft when it comes to changes, because that's the core of what you do?
Yeah, look, we're humans.
Yes. Yeah. Well, this is what I'm always curious, is that does the environment and the role change the human?
Yeah, look, find me a human who says that they always love change, and I'll find you a liar, right? But without a doubt, look, I think we are in a constant state of change, Ali.
Yes.
And I think for Microsoft, we've worked really hard, especially since Satya's come in. Look, a lot's been written. I don't know if you've read Satya's book or anything like this about hidden restart, or hidden refresh. But one of the big cultural resets Satya put into our business was this idea of growth mindset, and this theory of constant learning, constant change, and constant growth. And it's something that we've really driven hard since Satya came in. I think Satya came in 2014, I believe, 2014. And it's something that we've really instilled, to our own admission, the previous 10 years or so, we've missed big waves like mobile. When really that was a market that we could and maybe should have capitalized on. And we knew that in certain places like cloud, we were maybe a little bit behind at the time. Guys like Google and AWS had blazed a trail there, and others at the time. And we also needed to be more responsive to new market trends. So first and foremost is our culture. And our culture around growth mindset was fundamental. And coupled into that then was that needs to be more than just a sign up in the office. It needs to be something that we drive through. So we changed a lot around how we measure success in our organization. And we use basically 3 differentiation spheres when we look at impact in our organization. So it's not just good enough that you contribute individually, Because if you contribute individually, that gives you that kind of self-serving approach where it's okay to do whatever you want as long as you hit your target.
Yeah.
And in an organization of 250,000 people, that isn't conducive to a productive environment. So the next parts that we added, and I think are probably the most crucial areas, is how do you contribute to the success of others? Yeah. So how do you help those around you to be better and to develop and to be more effective? And the next one is, how do you build on the work of others to drive? So maybe give you an example. I lead a sales team and say we're working with your organization, Ali, Latrobe, right? And then to me, nirvana is that your account executive or sales specialist, they research trends that they're seeing around, say, Copilot utilization across the world. Yeah. What are other universities doing? What are the learnings we're doing? Yeah. What have their contemporaries done in other parts of the world or their peers locally here in Australia and New Zealand done? Okay, great. Then we've taken that. So that's building on the work of others. We've then turned that into something that will add value to your organization, to the tribe. And that's great. And then, we get to a great position and that salesperson sells something to you. Fantastic. But then once they've done that, the journey for me doesn't stop there. How are they going to pass on those learnings to their peers? Yeah. How are they going to contribute to the success of others? And so through that approach, it's really helped us evolve our culture to change, to learning, to development, and to sharing and collaboration. And it's a big part of our interview process. It's a big part. We don't just look at, sales figures or how many lines of code they can develop. It's culture first there, which I think is just absolutely crucial. And then the last part of that is what I would say is, and probably the thing that probably shocks people coming into Microsoft more than anything, is with those foundations, how self-serve the culture is. We don't really prescribe or micromanage the learning journey for our team members. It's very much choose your own adventure. Yes, we have a vast library of learning, but we also encourage people to go out there and find their own learning as well, find their own insights and share it. So I think to the change management piece, a lot of that change management is done amongst peers. We've almost got a culture of change in that model.
I love it. This idea of an organization is like a team sport. Everybody contributes. But I also love the idea that by me learning and choosing my own learning journey, I know that whatever I'm going to use or choose will contribute to the success and the win of Microsoft as a team.
Absolutely.
And to share my own experience with Microsoft anyway, as business partners, I haven't really seen anything different apart from whoever I talk to, they're genuinely interested in my success as a client. So, and this is not a plugin. This is not anything. I've actually seen it, and I experience it every time I get in touch with Microsoft.
Well, that's good to hear. That's what we aim for. So that's good to hear.
Yes, you did talk about Copilot. I should call it properly, Microsoft 365 Copilot. It's a biggie.
That's right.
And talk to me about the trials. I think started with the government agencies about a couple of years ago, and I think they were the early adopters of. Now 4 or 5 months ago, they released a report on the adoption of Copilot, and one of the things that really sort of fascinated me about that report is that they were using, because Copilot has been upgraded almost every day. I have been living and breathing Copilot since January last year. And I've seen the huge jump, especially around June or July last year. And now I love it. But I'm thinking they have experienced Copilot when it was at the baby stages. What's your take on that? Because when we release a report about an old experience and the technology has already gone so far ahead, how do you marry and how do you balance those two things?
Yeah. I think, and look, great that you're seeing and experiencing the constant development of Microsoft 365 Copilot, and well done on getting the naming right. That's good. There's a lot of Copilots out there for sure.
Yes.
So that's great. one of the things I listen to quite a lot of podcasts, and so apologies if I'm using like a massively overused phrase or a buzzword phrase. But I really love how federal government took an approach of almost they stripped down this whole question of artificial intelligence down to first principles.
Yes,
and the first principle really. And I, by the way, I'm massively paraphrasing and putting words into people's mouths with this, but I'll give my summary of what happened there. Was that the government and the federal government really were very keen to make a first leap into generative AI, because they could see, from a first principle, there's, I don't know about you, Ali, I always work on the basis of, is this something that is just going to happen, regardless of, legislation, government, regardless of organizational interference, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Is this a trend that's ultimately going to happen? And certainly mobile, yes, was always going to happen. The moment the iPhone 1 was launched, it was going to happen, right? You could see the benefits were just so clear. Cloud, it was definitely going to happen, right? You can see the benefits straight away in terms of the speed of innovation, the reduction in costs, increase in flexibility, etc. And it coincided with network backbone increasing monumentally. So it was always going to catch on. It was a matter of when. And I think generative AI falls into this bucket. It's happening. It's going to happen even faster, and it's going to be a fundamental part of our life in the same way as internet, mobile, cloud was. So I think they looked at it through that lens, and is my assumption.
Yeah.
And I think that was awesome. They then looked at Copilot was a very small part of this overall discussion with federal government at the time, because what they were looking at was fantastic, which is, okay, well, what does Australia need to do to be competitive in this space and to thrive in this space, not be a victim of change? Yeah. And so they, we started discussions with the government that resulted in Australia being the first country on the planet where Microsoft had announced an investment in the way that we did, which was $5 billion over the next 2 years. So 1 year left on that, which would be a build out in the infrastructure to support generative AI, skilling program around skilling, I think it's 500,000 Australians around generative AI, and also really leaning into making sure that Australia has the cybersecurity skills and capability to be able to be comfortable that generative AI was a big part of this. The next was federal government then saying, okay, well, that's great from an infrastructure and foundational, but how do we put our initial toe in the water? What's the generative AI almost training wheels that we can bring into our environment to see the benefits today? And this is where we went with this, at the time, the 6-month trial with Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot. To your point around the trial and towards the increase in the improvement of Microsoft 365 Copilot, the trial went from December 2023 through to the 30th of June 2024, and the report from the Digital Transformation Agency, the DTA, was written from there. So a lot of the findings there, to your point, as I keep saying to my team and to customers, you've probably heard me say it before, is, our product is only going to get better and the users are only going to get more proficient from here on in, right? And so for even that first 6 months, we were seeing off the report an average of an hour a day productivity gain. And then you dive into, okay, where were they seeing it? It was only really, if you look at the report, in Teams, in the enterprise chat capability, and then Word, I think, were the top three there. There was recognition that Excel was still improving, and recently we've improved with Python for Excel. They couldn't use largely the Outlook capability, which email is a big productivity driver was seen inside of Microsoft 365 Copilot. Yeah. The ability to summarize and prioritize your inbox. And because that was only available in Outlook New at the time, not Outlook Classic, which it is now. It's available in Outlook Classic. So to be able to get those levels of productivity gains were just incredible. But the big kicker, and to your point around change management, Ali, was big difference between those who were able to turn that 1 hour a day into productive time, i.e. do something more valuable, or turn it into real productivity savings was the number 3, and 3 was the number of training sessions they'd attended.
Yeah.
And so the moment they had those 3 training sessions, they were able to recognize those productivity gains, which I thought was fascinating at the time.
The reason why I'm asking about that is mainly from my own experience. I worked with quite a few people on getting them on board to use Microsoft 365 Copilot. And let's just say March last year, the people that I introduced to Copilot at the time, and Copilot was just getting up to speed with the enhancements and getting better, basically. When I lost their confidence in the system, it was hard for me to regain it later. And because they saw one version of it. And therefore, with my change management practice, I actually changed my narrative. And so my narrative was that stay a little bit longer with it. And the longer you stay with this, the better it will get. Yeah. And the better you be familiar with that. So, and then that did not work. And so I shifted my narrative into a different thing. Don't be disheartened if Copilot does not respond to you the way you would like it to respond. Not yet. So I tried different ways to gain that because like with any new technology, there's always doubt, what is this and all of that. Plus the noise in the market, this is going to replace people's jobs. And so it was quite overwhelming. But my story so far is that, and I'll give you a sentiment from somebody on Monday, and they said that there's absolutely no way I can do anything without Copilot now. And that's a huge mind shift. And the same people that I talked to about in March and April last year, it's the same people now. They're saying, actually, we heard it's actually doing good things. So I was always fascinated about how the government has gone about what I call the old version, in my head anyway, the old version of Copilot and the upgraded version. However, what Microsoft is doing as well is doing change management. So what OpenAI has done, they've basically released it to the masses and say, use it. That's actually change management. You experiment with it. You play with it. And I loved what you guys did as well. You added, for example, Copilot into Edge as a version in there at the start when people can play with it. And I really admire the level of support. I think there is a deep understanding from Microsoft on the power of focusing on how this change needs to be managed within an organization. Oh. The level of support and the interest that I got from Microsoft was tremendous. And that gives me a very good idea about how they think about change management.
Yeah, it is so critical in the as a cloud organization. We live and die by how much utilization our products have, but more importantly, I think the impact that the solutions have. And with that, it would be great to get your opinion. As a change manager, this speed of innovation here is so great. But also the parameters of how it can transform are so open. I go back to the days where, I used to be, my primary line of business was voice PBXs. Well, that had, 60 different functions, and that's what it did, right? 50, 60 different functions, 58 of them people didn't want to use. They just want to be able to pick up a phone and do voicemail, right? That's realistically what they wanted. So you just train them on that stuff. The reality is, for me, there's no point writing a manual for this thing because it's gonna change. And also the people doing the change management, it's not, you don't just get up and train people on this, right? You've got to get interaction. You've got to get peers talking to each other, a champion network. And I'm just, firstly, let me just recognize, it's been awesome partnering with yourself, Ali. The creativity that you brought in terms of things like your champion networks, in terms of how you've been able to manage the change management program there has just been phenomenal. And it's been great to see some of the impact there. And I think though, from a Microsoft side, it's really great that you're recognizing the team are really invested in this, outside of job description. Yeah, we're really invested in this because we're still learning with you. This isn't the PBX with 68 different functions, right? This is us learning what it does every day with you. And this is going to go even greater now as we expand into the agentic world. Being able to bring together now the core Microsoft 365 Copilot capability, and then expanding it to your applications and how your applications can work with each other in an agentic world with Microsoft 365 Copilot.
Yes.
The opportunities here and the use cases start to become limitless. So I think the agile manner is just so crucial, and the link between Microsoft, our customers, and then the different user base within our customers is what's going to drive change here. This constant sharing, the contribution towards each other's success is going to be just fundamental. And certainly those organizations with that kind of culture are those who are going to thrive best, I think, in the AI world.
I want to shift gear, Ian, and then I want to ask you a question around all is well with technology and the advancement. What can you see from where you sit in terms of any cultural shift in how organizations are going to behave going forward?
It's a good question. And look, I think the future, this is one of those where you look back in 2 years and realize that you've missed it by an absolute mile because the market's changing so fast.
Yes.
The reality is in the next 2 years, the bulk, I would say the vast majority of certainly information workers, and I would suggest the workforce in general, will be using won't be going into Outlook or Teams as their first port of call like they do today when they come into the office, right? They'll be asking, hopefully their Copilot. They'll be asking Copilot. I think then culturally, and you may have heard Satya's, and if not, I'll share with you the link. Maybe you share with it in your post. Satya's recent podcast where he was talking about the move of business logic out of SaaS applications into the agents going forward and the opportunities that brought.
Yes.
And so I look at that and then go, okay, well, what if that is the evolution, which personally I think he's absolutely spot on. Then what does that mean for organizational cultures going forward and the fluidity of an organization? So we've always been traditionally siloed, whether it's, finance or, the faculty area in an education environment, sales, marketing, et cetera, frontline services, et cetera. The move from those applications now to become, those applications now to, in effect, just become CRUD databases with the business process now lying in the agents, enables us to bring together the culture of an organization very closely, where we've got real visibility into each other's lives and really a much less siloed environment. So I don't have a clear answer on what that will mean for culture, but certainly, as I mentioned before, the big thing for me for culture is that it's the skills and the culture that's going to thrive going forward, which is just crucial. I think a collaborative culture, I think one where we're open to learning off each other, not, shooting guns at each other's silos,
yes.
But actually learning off each other. I'm not sure the answer is moving to a completely agile world, but certainly having some of those agile principles underneath to bring together those tribes, those scrums to work together across the organization, I think will be crucial. And then outside of that, a culture of sharing where, we really start to learn what's working in other areas and what can drive forward. I think that what it also means, though, for me, for leadership and the skills going forward is a much greater focus. And you'll know this, Ali, like if I strip down the people that I've worked with who've gone on to have the most impactful careers. Yeah. What is the big thing that they're great at, right? They're great at clarity of thought, clarity of communication. They're good at understanding data sets and being able to articulate that and expand around that. And that skill set there, not only will it not go away, but those people will rise to the top in organizations very, very quickly. No longer in an AI world will we value stewardship. Your ability to navigate, I'm the only guy who knows how to use this database, right? Or, the people of, let's face it, a decent chunk of people, especially big corporates, have lived on over the past 20, 30 years. It's going to favor much more the spirit of creativity, spirit of entrepreneurship, and spirit of ingenuity, I think, going forward.
I think definitely is going to impact bringing some silos down. I'm already seeing it.
Yeah.
The world of agents, though, is going to be interesting. I am anticipating that at some stage, there will be some pushback from certain departments, and there will be lots of talk around access to information and all of that. I've heard that talk maybe 12 months ago, and then it dissipated after a while, because then people actually started realizing the value of the new technology, and there are different ways to protect the information without missing out on the opportunity of the technology, because the benefits outweigh the risks in there. So I'm definitely seeing that happening. I had a conversation with one of the guests last year, and then she's a professor at Oxford, and then she talked about the education experience in high school. And I still remember that, and made me think about everything else. And she said something around that students nowadays, we give them an A or excellent, but that excellent before the internet world was different excellent from after the internet world. And now that excellent will be different after generative AI. Yep. So the standard will be raised. Then that gives me the feeling and the idea and the thinking that even in the workplace, performance measures will be different, because you've got capability now, but an amazing capability at your fingertips. And so maybe in the next 3 years, performance expectations will be different because we can be more creative. We can probably do more. Like, I know that generative AI gives me the flexibility and the capacity to service more clients, for example, and with the quality at the same time. So that's how I'm seeing it. But whatever shift we're going to see, although it might be disruptive a little bit, but it's going to be a good shift. I think I am enjoying more golf, put it that way, nowadays than before, mainly because I know, and you're right, I think the sentiment that I start every day checking in with Copilot rather than going to individual applications, that's already happening.
Yep.
There's a change in the workflow and how we're actually managing these things. From where you sit, I just want to know maybe a question around, in general, businesses in Australia. Are they still the majority still thinking about whether this is going to stick or not?
Are they thinking about whether it's going to stick? I'm not sure about that. I think where, and this changes rapidly. So what I'm just about to say now in January 2025 is going to date massively if somebody's listening to this in 3 months' time. Yeah.
Yes.
So just want to say that, because what's changed, certainly the last 3 months, I've seen a big change both in private and public sector organizations. I think where we are right now, if I look, you've probably got, you still got quite a large base. So if I look now at our enterprise business, I can't give exact percentages, but a very high percentage of our customer base right now has some sort of deployment of Microsoft 365 Copilot in their workplace, some sort of deployment of our other, of Copilot Studio for their agents environments, or they're building applications around Azure OpenAI. Then it's, okay, well, what are the tiers that we're seeing? Yeah, and where do we see most of those customers? There's still a pretty solid chunk who are putting their toe in the water. Maybe they've rolled it out. By the way, I'll challenge some of the strategies there, but maybe they've rolled it out to a few people in IT, and they've rolled it out typically to key executives, to to make sure that they can drum up enough sponsorship or say that they're on the journey just in case somebody goes, what are we doing about it, AI?
Yeah.
I think that's fine. And look, it's good to know. I think the important thing for IT getting their hands on it is that you're comfortable with the security, compliance, and governance, and there's no oversharing risks, et cetera, et cetera. So I completely get that. I think though, and I'm sure you'll agree this, Ali, with your own journey, this only really comes to light when you get it into users' hands.
Yes.
And you really start seeing human creativity take over. And so I would say where the bulk of our customers are now are in this, what I would class as personal productivity layer, where they're looking at Microsoft 365 Copilot. And, you look back, CSIRO have just released their results of the Copilot trial, of their Microsoft 365 Copilot trial. You mentioned DTA there. And even you may have seen one recently with Brisbane Catholic Education, where they identified the personal productivity gain of educators saving 9.3 hours per week of educator time, right?
Yeah.
And I think that, and don't get me wrong, that is fantastic, right? Where DTA trial, we're finding an hour a day. CSIRO I don't think got down to an actual level of hours, but showed a general recognition of productivity there in the report. But I think we're scratching the surface there with those figures.
Yes.
And that's at that personal productivity layer, where we're basically using it for summarizing first draft, and things like meeting recap inside of Teams being very popular. And certainly I love it. I use it every day. It enables me to double and triple book myself and still stay across things. So I like that. The next stage, though, is I think where we're now seeing, and literally in the past, I would say past 3 or 4 months, customers really go quite quick, and that is around organizational impact. So taking that assuming that we can get that kind of 10% productivity gain, let's say, 10 to 15% productivity gain that I mentioned before, which is fantastic, right? The productivity dividend that enables organizations to focus on other things in their organization, I think is fantastic. The next part, though, is how do we look at our business process layer? And how do we look at infusing that Microsoft 365 Copilot with agents, bringing together our core systems of records, our core business processes, and infusing that with generative AI. I was just using ours yesterday, where I was combining data from our customer data from our CRM database with our financial data. And this before would have been hours and hours of work. In fact, hand on the heart, I'm not particularly good at VLOOKUPs myself. Yes. But being able to do that inside of the chat, inside of Copilot, and come back with just amazing results that are super useful that I can literally just copy and paste and put into a management report, were just incredible. That literally right there saved me 3 hours with one task. Yeah. And so this is where I think we're going to start to see this really, really take off. But without a doubt, I would say, if you split between those 3 tiers, we're now seeing, if you would have asked me 6 months ago, I'd say 90% of our customers are in that, test it. I would say now we're probably looking at maybe 20% of our customers in that line. They've now shifted up to personal productivity, and we're now seeing a 10 to 20%, I would say, maybe more, looking at, okay, what does this agentic layer mean for us going forward?
Well, I'm going to share with you before I go to my last question to you, and I'm aware of time and thoroughly enjoying this. Good. I'm going to share with you some thoughts and from a change manager working in this space and living and breathing, AI. First of all, I'm so excited about the agentic world. I've already chosen names for my agents, and I'm gonna collect them.
And you want to share?
I want to, and then I am thinking also I can have agents and build a relationship with them, and the project will finish, and then I'll delete them. How wonderful is that? Yes. So I'm already seeing the story in my head. But one thing that I always talk to people about, and certainly with the clients I work with, is that It's no longer, can Copilot or generative AI improve my productivity or not? That argument is already done. We've already proved it. You do not need, like if there's any advice I can give to anybody, do not spend your resources in testing whether that's going to make a productivity gain or not. It's already doing it. You need to think about how can all of your people get hold of this technology, how you support them and train them, and look forward to the advancement. Like I'm already thinking about how the agentic world is gonna shape up my workflow as a professional. So that's one. The second thing, for example, I work now with La Trobe University, and we've got about 200 people using and about 80% of them use it on a daily basis. I always say to these people, you're already making an impact on the organization, because every time you use Copilot to process a task or send a document, the ripple effect on the organization is already happening. So it's not just your workflow. And that's why other people will actually see what Copilot is doing and say, can we have a license and all of these things? So if there's any advice I can give to anybody listening to this podcast, stop saying, is this really real and is going to improve my productivity? It does. The only difference is that only competency and really understanding of the technology, which is not earth-shatteringly difficult, especially in Microsoft now, is making the experience so easy. Like one of the changes that you guys made recently is that wherever you look at Microsoft Copilot, in whatever setting, it's the same experience. You're actually seeing the same things. Now, that's an amazing from a change management perspective. You're actually creating the same consistent, cohesive picture that wherever you look at Copilot, it's the same experience. So you don't need to think about it differently. Maybe 6 months ago it was not, but now it's actually wonderfully, it's the same experience. I want to move to my last question, which is, what's your advice to people in the change management community when it comes to, the generative AI and AI as a technology going forward? Does that mean that we need to think about our profession, not just as users, but we think forward about our customers and clients who will be using this technology and how we help them adopt that change?
No, I think it's a great question, and actually linked to the comments you just made there, Ali, in terms of the productivity gains there is done. What I would also say is done as well. Like there's enough evidence, I think, to show that Microsoft 365 Copilot derives productivity return. And look, I've worked across financial services in my prior role. I work now across obviously all of the public sector markets. The reality is, for an information worker, a typical information worker, 90% of what an information worker does in a bank is the same as what they do in government. There's that 10% veneer which makes us different. So absolutely, you could take the DTA report and transfer that over to a financial services institution, and there's your business case, right? Yes. What I would do, though, that I think is way more, it gets back to first principles, right? The reality about this is, generative AI is out there already. People are using it every day. ChatGPT is the most used consumer tool that has ever been seen on the planet at this stage of its release. People, you then look at the most advanced the most adopted applications in the world right now, at a consumer level. So you have ChatGPT, granted, you have Google Search, which now has Gemini, Gemini Infusion in it. Yes. People are using that every single day. You open up WhatsApp, it's got AI Infusion in there, Facebook, Instagram, etc., etc. People are using this every day and they're getting used to it. Don't be the person that when they come into work go, oh no, you can't use that, or we're going to shut it down, right? So the answer is, you just need a solution that is secure, that you trust within your own environment, that is going to give generative AI capability. And by the way, that's what we've just done with, you may have seen with Microsoft 365 Copilot Chats, which we're now making available to everybody with a work ID and Entra ID. So then taking that forward to the change management side, and I think it's a really interesting point of change management, Ali, and you've been, you're way more in this space than I am day to day. But I look at the role really of the change manager to move now from chief teaching officer to chief excitement officer. And I'll give you an example, actually. Some of La Trobe's students may have been there. I was in Sydney recently, and we had a room full of university students. And we asked them a question, and we said, how many people use generative AI every day? Maybe ChatGPT, something like this every day. Everybody put their hand up.
Wow.
How many of you pay for ChatGPT's premium version out of your own back pocket? These are students, university students. This is $30 per user per month.
Yes,
US, I believe. 75% of the room put their hand up. By the way, they've clearly got a lot more money than I did when I was a student. I can't remember having $30 a month available at the end of the month.
Yes.
But and it just shows this is now a staple diet of a modern worker. These are people coming into the workforce in the next year or two, right? That are going to be expecting this. So and are fluent already. Yeah, so I think starting from that premise that, and our research, I don't know if you've seen our work lab details, and maybe we can post in the chat after this, is we do something called the Work Trend Index. And the Work Trend Index said that 75% of people surveyed worldwide, and this is thousands of people worldwide, 75% of people use generative AI tools in work today, and 78% of those tools are not IT sanctioned, are not corporate sanctioned. So this space is done. Yeah. So there is, what I would say with it is, and look, hopefully the answer is Microsoft 365 Copilot or one of our Copilots at Microsoft, which, are obviously enterprise grade and secure and de-risk these environments. But if it's not ours, then the reality is for organizations, the cost and risk of doing nothing right now or going slow is way more than the cost of doing something or moving fast and taking advantage of this new technology. Yeah. So to go back to the change management journey, for me is, again, moving away from, hey, it's a manual and I need to teach you on this manual, the old PBX days or whatever, right, towards a much more creating a vibrant environment for change in an organization, and you've done a fantastic job of this. You've built your champion communities. You've created forums to share. We do it. I don't think we've ever done side by side with our customers so many excitement days. And say in public sector right now, we have our Copilot Club where through Engage we've connected hundreds of public sector users across Australia and New Zealand to collaborate with each other and to crowdsource ideas on how to make each other more productive. So I think this is, to me, this is what it's all about now. Is it's chief excitement officer for me is the role of a change manager going forward.
I'm not changing my title, but I like what you.
You don't like that one? I am. It's a CEO title. Maybe
I'm going to go to my bosses and say my role is chief excitement officer. They probably, I probably need to ask Copilot to come up with alternative titles for me.
Well, I'm in sales, not marketing. So,
yes.
That's right.
I can tell. But look, I take your point around. For me, the change managers, first of all, they need to be super users, and that's the only way to know this change is actually to embrace it. Absolutely. heavily. And for example, I've proved it through experiments with the change managers I work with. It saves us about 30%. This is even, I'm pretty sure, with time and competency, it will be even more. And so the questions will always be to organizations, when people will get more time, how do we find ways to give them more meaningful work? That will be really the main question for organizations, because giving people meaningful work is a hard thing, but that's for another day and another discussion, Ian, with you.
Well, I think the big thing with that, Ali, is to really focus, and this is where, a lot of discussions around our jobs going to be lost, et cetera, et cetera. To me, it's the wrong conversation for people to have. And generative AI isn't about how to get people to do more work. It's how do we elevate humans to do better work, more impactful work. And as I said, look, you're in higher education. The educators in higher education today and in K-12 massively. What's the commonality they have with doctors, nurses, emergency services right now. And the thing they have in common is they're pretty much across the board. A key corporate strategy with all of them right now is, how do we take the pressure off them? How do we reduce their workload? How do we make this a more attractive place to work? How do we elevate their purpose?
Yeah.
And this is the opportunity now with generative AI, not the kind of scaremongering sides where it's going to cost everybody's jobs. The reality is the Western world right now is seeing unemployment levels that have been the lowest in generations. This is about, how do we elevate? How do we become, take government, education, and private organizations to a whole different level of transformation and evolution going forward.
Fantastic. I am grateful for your time today, Ian. This has been really enlightening conversation for me. We would like them to really learn about from this episode is that embrace the technology. It's not going to harm you. So, and Microsoft 365 Copilot is actually at the vanguard. Thank you, first of all, to Microsoft for persevering and not missing out on the opportunity like they did with the iPhone. Your CEO took charge. And I really loved, I follow him all the time and I love what you guys do. Maybe next time, and not too distant in the future, I'll get you back again, Ian, and then we cover another aspect or maybe the journey so far, because this conversation probably will be old in about 3 months. And
that's right.
Yes. How would people connect with you, Ian?
Yes, so I'm on LinkedIn. Best way to connect with me. Maybe we can, when we post, we can share my link there. So please feel free to reach out at any time.
Thank you so much. Thank you again for joining me at the Inner Game of Change podcast. Ian, I'm grateful for your time. Until next time, stay well and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. If you found this episode valuable, remember to subscribe to stay updated on upcoming episodes. Your support is truly appreciated. And by sharing this podcast with your colleagues, friends, and fellow change practitioners, it can help me reach even more individuals and professionals who can benefit from these discussions. Remember, and in my opinion, change is an enduring force, and you will only have a measure of certainty and control when you embrace it. Until next time, thank you for being part of the Inner Game of Change community. I am Ali Jama, and this is the Inner Game of Change podcast.